Come on. How you doing? Let me take this away. There you go. I tried. Oh, this is bad. This is very bad. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Khepri Guides. This is the Khepri Support Arena Guide, episode 4. This is the Bootless Arena episode. I'll be making one more without boots, and then we're moving back to Athena without boots. Actually, shoes, technically. And then, you know, once we catch up with the portions in which Athena without shoes runs, I believe that it would be Conquest, I think Joust as well. I had the series for, I think I was in the middle of Arena, or I was in the middle of, no, I had Clash and Conquest on Athena, and I think I was in the middle of Joust. I'll figure it out later. It's on my YouTube channel, it's its own playlist. But back to the point, we have a Horus, that's good. Let me see, Anubis, okay. I'm really hoping for another physical here. Although I will admit that 2 mages is not ideal in a Khepri scenario. Now she's gonna be, Death. What the heck, I'll just be Convention. I think the Convention skin is really beautiful, honestly. I prefer it over even the Diamond, it just looks so amazing. Anywho, let's see what they have. They have 2 mages, they have 2 hunters, that's going to be a problem for me. It's going to be a problem for Anubis, but the Agni is going to have an absolute field day if I can protect him. I wonder if Zhonghui is going to build hybrid, because if he doesn't, then Gilgamesh is going to be the only real tank on their team. Assuming Gilgamesh even builds tank in the first place, he might build hybrid as well. I can potentially see an issue. We're going Sentinel's Gift, and we're going to try and rush Gauntlet of Thebes, although that is very high risk. And then our next move is going to be Magic Shell at the very start, at the very least. There's not really any kind of need for meditation in Arena. I've just never really seen it be useful. Also, this visual, I've not yet played the Stranger Things Arena, but this is absolutely fantastic. This looks beautiful. I love this. Oh, that's cool. I love this a lot. This looks amazing. That's one thing I've always really appreciated. I've actually watched all 3 seasons of Stranger Things. The aesthetic is absolutely amazing, although I've always been fond of the kind of retro-futuristic type look, which was common in those decades, and I just think it's really amazing looking. Although I must confess that the shirts that they wore in the 3rd season, what is that, the 80s, I think? Those are terrible. I can't quite remember off the top of my head what decade that's supposed to be. I think it's the 80s. 80s or... It's about the 80s. I can't remember if it's which specific decade it is. Let's save Horus here. No, Horus is fine. Never mind. No, we're fine. We forced them back. I took that damage for no reason. I'm taking this damage for no reason. And Agni is absolutely insane. Let's make sure that Artemis dies. There we go. Is everyone okay? Yeah, he is. Just gonna make sure he gets out alive. No, no problem for us. That's he was doing his job, that's fine. But he is totally okay. You are coming back over here with me, Gilgamesh. I will die for my team. That is fine. That is what I'm supposed to do. We got first blood. I was the one who died. We're okay. This is okay. And they turned it around. They did exactly what they needed to. They turned that around, and they absolutely slapped. Looks like they might get Zhonghui. He just activated his ult, so that's going to increase his protections temporarily. Let's see if Horus gets him. No. Oh, that's unfortunate. Yeah, that was rough. Yeah, we weren't going to be able to stop Discordia. She was too close to the wall at that point. There's just nothing you're going to be able to do about that. Agni, play it safe. Agni. Alright, I just wasted my dash. He made me too nervous. What are you doing, punk? Get out of here. Yeah, why are you focusing me, Gilgamesh? You should know better. Are you building tank? He's building hybrid. Okay, Zonkui is possibly building hybrid. It's too early to tell if he's going full damage with some HP just to give himself a little bit more durability, or if he's actually going hybrid. We'll only be able to tell later on, really. She activated her movement buff. Alright. I got Discordia's dash, though. I have Gauntlet of Thieves ready, so I probably should go back and get that so I can start building those stacks. It's going to be very important to build these stacks quickly. We're going to get Sovereignty afterwards just to bolster the physical protections of my teammates, which is going to be very important later on. I can definitely also see an argument for Witchblade being built, but I want Sov first because it gives us HP 5, which is not super important in Arena, but it's not bad either, and at this point they really don't have a huge amount of attack speed anyways, so it's not quite as important to decrease that at this time. Hey there, how you doing? That was nice. And now I get the kill, apparently? Okay. Did not intend to kill him, but there was... it's not really something that I can control at that point. This is a very risky move on our part. I absorbed that, though, so that's good. Okay, yeah, I didn't have enough time to ult myself. I could have, well, I wouldn't necessarily have gotten out, but maybe. I would have had at least a fighting chance of getting out if I'd ulted myself there. Don't lose faith, Horace. Don't lose faith. I don't know why I was going to list Horace's name in there. I'm not sure why. That was a little odd. He threw that away. This is a really good team comp for Agni to be fighting against. They don't have a whole lot of abilities to get away from him. Oh, that was a terrible, terrible move. Nice. Excellent. What is this ability called again? Solar Flare, that's right. Brain cramps. You know how it is. Ah, I didn't have enough time. I don't move fast enough. You'll be fine, you'll be fine. She's out. No problems here. She's an absolute mad lad, though. No, no, no. Okay, we have allies here, so it's actually fine now. That was a good counter move. I still can abduct him out of it, so it is kind of a waste, but whatever. Hi there. Nice. He walked right into that at the last possible second. What the heck? Sorry. I could not take that in time. Oh, shoot. I did not realize Gilgamesh was back there. What are you doing, punk? That was nice. Nice move, Agni. Give me a couple of... Nope, I'm not going to make it out of here. I shouldn't have chased. Ooh. Nope, I'm dead. I stayed too long. I should have gone back way earlier. At this point, what I really need is Pestilence, and I'm going to go for Witchblade. I might then, after that, get Mail of Renewal, so I can provide my allies with some emergency healing, but I'm not sure at this point yet. Heavenly Wings for escapes. We need to be able to ebb and flow with the tide of the enemy, to put it in poetic terms. You're fine. Alright. Horus is doing a good job keeping the enemy off while our teammates eliminate... Come on. How you doing? Up. Let me take this away. There you go. I tried. Oh, this is bad. This is very bad. That was nice. Good ult, good ult. Excellent. Dead. Nice. Turn that around, turn that around. Oh, she beads. Alright. We get him, though. Oh, good ult. Good ult. We need to go. We need to go. They're coming back fresh. We don't need to be here. This is not what we need. This is not what we need. I have a little bit left, but not nearly enough to do what I need to do for my team. Witchblade next. Absolutely Witchblade. They have enough auto attacks on their team. Actually, their whole team, except Discordia, it could suffer negative effects. Sankui is definitely not building hybrid. Just the HP, probably for primarily the increased health, just for the sake of not dying as quickly. Good play, good play. Can we get him? Can we finish him off? No. I'm moving too slow. We're not going to be able to close that gap. Oh, Horus winning. Okay, that works out really well. Get her, get her, get her. Yes. Ah, so close. So close. Uh-oh. Nice dodge, nice dodge. Good play, good play. Go ahead, focus me. Focus me. Yeah? Now what are you going to do, punk? Good play, Anubis. Good play, thank you. You're going to jump on me, and I'm going to make you regret it. No, you're not. You actually made the smart choice. Okay. Nice. Nice. Excellent. Very nice job. We're really turning this around slowly but surely. I gotta go back. I gotta buy items. I gotta get more health. I gotta get more mana. I'm so close to Witchblade. So close. Look at that. 10 more seconds, I would have been absolutely golden. Alright. So this is turning out about as well as I expected. That was really nice. That was very quick movement there on that. I whiffed all of that. That was terrible. Oh, wow. I just lost my touch now. Right in the middle of the match. Great. Oh, that's exactly the opportunity that I needed to grab him. I'll take that. I'll come back pretty fresh, too, because HP 5 for the absolute win. Nice. Uh-huh. Okay. Yep. We're fine with this. Kill him. There you go. Worth it. Even if I die, that's totally worth. I'm not even gonna die? Oh, yes, I am. No, she hits like a wet noodle. What the heck? Denied. His deviation alone caused him to lose track of that. Nice. Wow, this Anubis is on point with the stuns. You'll love to see it. Alright, what do I want as my last item? I need Pridwin, actually. For the cooldowns, primarily. Alright, we are really turning this around. Primarily because we have a bit better of a late game. Agni hits harder later on in the game, obviously. Horus obviously has the sustain to really be able to get nice high level ups. He's got really nice consistent crowd control. He does decent damage, which doesn't decrease that much as the game goes on. I provide bigger and bigger health bonuses to allies. They should be able to take care of Zonkui. Yep, alright. Can I save her? Can I get between you two? Kind of? No. What do I have with me? Alright, I have enough. Yes! Uh-oh. Oh, nice beads. I can't save them, I don't have anything up. What are you doing, punk? Get out of here. Oh, you want to attack? Alright, I'm down. I'm down. I'll sacrifice myself for the good of the cause. I don't care. I'm the support. It's my job. Let's go. Oh. Nice. Oh, I have no mana. I gotta get some mana. I need Pridwin. I need that cooldown. Also, in Arena, Pridwin's Pridwin's passive actually has a decent chance of either saving your life or dealing damage. Usually it's going to save your life. It's very rare that I've actually had Pridwin deal anything close to meaningful damage in this mode, because just of how much damage is generally flung your direction. It's mostly there for the cooldown, a little bit of a boost in your protections across the board, a little bit of a bonus shield when you need it. That was a good dash by Agni. Sorry, that wasn't even Agni. That was Izanami. What? You just wasted your ult. He had zero reason to use that there. That was not an attack. That was... He was not zoning us out, really. Nobody was doing anything useful in that moment. That was a complete waste of his ult. He's feeling the pressure, I think. There we go. I mean, nice. I was wondering what the heck hit me into the tower, kind of, but... Nope. You think you've got me, but my friends are nearby. Nope. Oh, shoot. I'm so sorry. I wish I wasn't stunned so I could have saved her. See him. Whatever. Oh, kill him. Kill him. Oh, I missed that. He's already got his ult back? That's pretty extreme. Ooh. Nope. I will not let you kill Anubis so easily. I will die for Anubis. I died for nothing. Never mind then. Oh, that's sad. Well, now we have everything here. Oh, we're cutting it close. We're cutting it close. Nice, nice. Nope. Oh no. Ooh, nice. Very nice. Look at that. I got him. I'm gonna trust. Oh, so close. No, we're fine, we're fine. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, alright. What are we actually doing here? We're too scattered around. That's not mine. I don't need that. Alright. I'm providing everyone with so many protections right now. Oh, I got her. Oh, I got her. Oh, no. You hate to see it. Why does Zonghui hit like a wet noodle anyways? Get out of here, punk. Yeah, that's right. You're insane. What the heck? Nope. Body blocking commences. Oh, I can't save him. I don't have anything up for that. No, we gotta get out of here. I've got nothing left. I have no mana. But I refuse to let Horus die so easily. You're fine. You're alright. I got you. I don't have anything I need to buy. Don't do it to her. Okay. I was gonna say. Ooh, I don't think she was ready for that. Yep, nice. I didn't mean to kill him, but alright. I'll come back in here. Yeah, you use that ult, I'll use my shell. Let's see which one wins. Shell. You will not be killing anyone, Gilgamesh. Sit down. Alright, so we had such a rough early start, but how do we turn that around? Especially since on paper we have theoretically a better early game. That's not really quite true. Observe for a hot second. First off, commend all these legends. Second off, let's take a look at the team comps. Now, Khepri is, as I've been saying pretty consistently, pretty late game. Abduct is riskier to use in the early game because you don't have the protections built up to necessarily, you know, stay alive while abducting a target. So, furthermore, besides the protections you need to, you know, survive an abduction attempt, you also have your passive providing a percentage of your allies of their health to them, so they get bonus health based on their maximum health. So the later in the game you are, the more bonus health they're getting. Izanami has her sides, which hit twice, 75% of her basic attack damage on the initial impact or the forward throw, and then the return does 25%. So the later on in the game you go, the more hits you get, which while the second hit doesn't trigger any item effects, you're still doing fairly decent amounts of damage as well. And she built really well for penetration. She got silver bow penetration here. She actually initially started with Ikival, which is incredibly effective against the enemy team comp, because like I said, the only member of the enemy team who had no use for their auto attacks was Discordia. Zonkui has the double shot auto, so he's got at least some justification for wanting to auto attack. Heimdall and Artemis being classic hunters auto attack anyways. The Gilgamesh, just from building towards this was originally, I believe, Benevolence it's called, initially, so obviously he was likely to build towards Animosity. So the fact that he was building towards Animosity meant that he was going to be prioritizing his auto attacks, so this was going to scale really well into the late game as well. That the second half of that passive, the reduction of attack speed, was absolutely incredible, and probably the reason why the Izanami survived a whole bunch of otherwise really ugly situations was just because of the passive of this. Goes right into Silver Branch Bow, which I think this might have been a bit too early to build. I don't usually build this in my first three because you aren't necessarily going to have the attack speed to actually pull off the passive here. I can understand this being built a little early for the penetration, but then frankly, Atlantis Bow would have been a better choice as a second item. So I do have to disagree with not necessarily the Silver Branch Bow. It is an absolutely incredible item on Izanami. I disagree with when it was built. I think this should have been built third at the earliest, fourth ideally. Asi should have been second because you can pull in that lifesteal, you get that little bit of flat penetration, because early on in the game, you don't necessarily need percentage penetration. The only item that I would argue that I would build, the only item that I consistently build first three items that is percent penetration is Charon's Coin, because it provides so much HP and MP5 that even if you're not actually building an early game for the penetration, that just allows the item to remain useful into the late game. You're building an early game for that sustain a lot of the time, and the penetration is just something that allows the item to remain relevant all the way to the end. In this particular situation, now don't get me wrong, Izanami played amazingly, but I think the Izanami could have probably died a little bit less if she'd built Asi right off the top, get that physical penetration, especially when you consider that the enemy team really did not have much in the way of physical protections, especially in the early game. I mean, the second item Gilgamesh built was Frostbound, which I'll talk about a little bit later, but this wasn't physical protections. Zhonghui had, I think, 15 out of the Vampiric Cloak? I mean, there just wasn't enough physical protections on the enemy team where they would be able to effectively handle even 15 flat pen. And then go into Atlantis Bow as a third item, start to build that percentage penetration. Then go into Silver Branch afterwards, because now you've got 3 items in a row that do attack speed, and you've got your attack speed buff on Izanami, so at that point, Silver Branch Bow as the fourth item would have been really great. Hunter's Cowl built after the fact, because obviously the attack speed, the lifesteal, it makes a lot of sense. And then Oboe. Now, I normally would say, Oboe, well, but in this particular case, there's two things really going in favor of Izanami for Oboe here. First off, this is Arena, so everyone's packed up quite nicely anyways, so that gives Izanami quite the benefit. Also, it allows Izanami to kind of spread her ability to hit multiple targets. She already has piercing shots. Her sides go through enemies, so she can already hit multiple enemies with that. But then when you consider that she can now zap enemies, and that Tusky, Artemis's ultimate, actually can be used to chain off a lightning bolt, you then realize that you can turn Artemis's ultimate against her or her allies. So this is actually quite useful if an Artemis is on the field, even if you don't think Tusky will appear that often. Honestly, it's on a 90-second cooldown, and being Artemis's only reliable method of getting out of ugly situations, Tusky is used a lot. And a lot of Artemis mains will back me up on the frequency of Tusky use. it's pretty common to see Tusky busted out in most major fights, just if not necessarily for aggression, for the survival of Artemis. Tusky is a very useful ultimate, and so he shows up a lot. And just being able to use him to chain off of is quite potentially potent. Furthermore, this triggers more of Silver Branch's passive as well. Now, the Horus, again, this is kind of a situation where Horus gets a little bit better as the game goes on because his heal becomes actually substantial. He has the protections in the late game to make his ultimate actually worthwhile. His crowd control abilities don't really change a whole lot from early to late game. He actually hits harder in the early game, technically. It scales decently well into the late game, but that flat damage is more meaningful in the early game, so his damage potential makes him early game damage-wise, but in the late game, once he's got those protections, and once he can actually heal a decent bit, especially since he did actually build Caduceus' shield, which is really nice, then Horus becomes tankier in the late game to a substantial enough degree that he can actually utilize his ult and not necessarily be worried about dying. So Horus becomes a better tank in the late game, but is a damage dealer in the early game, and this is in fact why the sledge was built first. It did cause Horus to die a little bit, lose a little bit more health in the early game than maybe you would normally want. It is a risk, especially in Arena. This was a huge risk, but when push comes to shove, he was trying to capitalize on his early game damage so he could really support the team in that way, and then as the game went on, he built more and more regular protections. He built Caduceus' shield, which is just fantastic on him all the time. Built Heartseeker at the end. I'm not 100% a big fan of Horus with Heartseeker for two reasons, primarily. The first one is that your heal obviously is not going to trigger this. That's the first problem I have. That alone wouldn't be a huge issue, but his ultimate is a second issue. Now, I'm almost diamond with Horus, and my one problem with Horus's kit is that his ultimate takes too long to land. It's very predictable, enemies can see it coming. It's generally a pain in the neck to actually damage somebody with that, so that's very inconsistent in terms of actually damaging an opponent. Now, that wasn't quite so important here in Arena, and it was a little bit easier to just accidentally hit someone in Arena anyways, if they didn't see it coming, which, I mean, it's Arena, they obviously are going to. But overall, I don't really like Heartseeker on Horus. I think this would have been better off as a Void Shield, personally. You would have been able to boost your own damage output by reducing the enemy's physical protections, Izanami's as well. I think it would have been a bit more impactful. Would it have been ideal in this team comp? Frankly, no. But it would have done more damage, or another actual option if he wanted to maintain his damage output and also keep with some defense, gone with Gladiator's Shield, which does bonus damage based on your protections, and he had really impressive protections here, so that would have really been able to allow his damage to carry decently well into the late game. Not quite as well as maybe an Assassin would, building hybrid, but it would have been enough. So I think Gladiator's Shield would have been a better pick at the end than Heartseeker. The Anubis absolutely dominated, and there are actually two reasons for this. First off, it should be pointed out that Anubis does really well in the early game because his passive gives him, after 3 hits of any ability, increase in protection by 21, I think. It's 21. It's 18 or 21, I can't remember if they nerfed it mildly, but he gets, flat protection increases and reduces the enemy's protections by a flat amount, so he has a really strong early game that carries really well into the mid game. How well Anubis does in the late game depends on how you build him, but generally Anubis falls off slightly in the late game because the enemies are building enough protections where you're not lifestealing as much, unless you have the appropriate amount of protections. The catch here is that in the right circumstances, Anubis doesn't care, and Anubis absolutely dominates in the late game against the right compositions, which the enemy happen to have. What Anubis really wants to see out of an enemy team is a lack of escape abilities. Heimdall's only escape ability, I mean, there's the crystal, but Anubis can just stun him out of the crystal, and then absolutely lay down destruction, which happened at least once. I think twice. Zonkwi has no escape. Artemis has no escape. She's basically relying on Tusky to get her out of there. Anubis had beads, so that was kind of a non-factor there. Gilgamesh was playing so aggressively that his jump, even though it technically serves as an escape, was very rarely used as such. So the Anubis had a really excellent enemy team comp to really take advantage of his abilities. This is why he built Gem of Isolation, even though I don't normally utilize Gem of Isolation on Anubis, because I often find that enemies just use their escape ability out of it. In this particular circumstance, they didn't have enough escape abilities. Discordia's leap, even, although it'll help her get out of that situation, it's such a short leap that it's not necessarily guaranteed to help her survive. And again, you're basically forcing Heimdall to use his ultimate in a defensive way, which is not what Heimdall wants to do. He wants to use that aggressively. So the Anubis was able to do a lot more damage to this team comp than, say, a team comp with 5 escapes. It's kind of a similar situation with Agni, but unlike the Anubis, the Agni has a bit of a hard time dealing sufficient amounts of damage. His Flame Wave does impressive amounts of damage, and so can potentially his Flame Dash, but these are both closer range abilities, so in the early game, while Agni has good damage, he's a bit higher risk than a lot of other mages. Anubis is equally higher risk, but he's got incredibly large amounts of lifesteal. Agni doesn't have that, he's just got the damage. Anubis can boost his protections. Agni can't. So Anubis, even though he is also a closer range mage, I would describe him as what I call a mid-range mage, where he's got some close-up, he's got some distance. Agni is similarly mid-range, where he's got some close-up, some distance, but he doesn't have the protection boost and the healing that Anubis has access to. So even though he plays kind of similarly in a kind of a zoomed-out view, he's not got the same advantages, and so is a riskier god to play in the early game. But as the late game rolls around and Agni's absolutely massive damage and scaling come into play, he hits harder and harder as the game goes on, and his late game damage has the potential to be incredible if you build him correctly, and the Agni absolutely built him really well. Notice he started off with Kronos Pendant. I've personally found through recent testing that maybe Kronos' Pendant is a little bit too expensive to build this early, especially in Arena. That was quite a risk, and it did eventually pay off, but it was quite risky to build in this context here. Soul Gem is fantastic on Agni pretty much all the time because you can trigger that passive from ridiculous distances, because Agni's ultimate has a bit of a longer range than most abilities in the game, so huge benefit there. You can stack that from a really healthy distance. Soul Reaver is amazing on Agni because all of his abilities do damage, and therefore all of them trigger Soul Reaver, even the gas. So that's actually quite potent as well. Now, I do feel like Soul Reaver might have been a little overkill with this team comp. They just happened to play into this, granted. Zonkwi built health, Gilgamesh built health, Artemis splashed in a little health here. I mean, by more pure circumstance than actual intention, Soul Reaver wound up working really well for him here, unless he specifically built this to counter the Gilgamesh and the Zonkwi, who were very clearly leaning heavily on health rather than protections. If this was counter-built towards them, bit of a bold move, but at that point we were ahead, so I can understand absolutely why you would want to take advantage of that. I just don't know what the motivation here was. If this wasn't built as a counter to Zonkwi and Gilgamesh, then this was a very risky move that just happened to work out, or this was specifically to counter-build Gilgamesh and Zonkwi, which is what I personally believe, that this is a counter-build, in which case it was still a bit risky because they were the only two primarily looking to increase health, and I would kind of want to see 3 before really dedicating to Soul Reaver, but Soul Reaver is amazing on Agni either way. It definitely helped do a lot of damage. Typhon's Fang, excellent, get some penetration there, which is the only thing Agni really needed, in all honesty, and I think probably one thing that he could have gotten a little bit more of. Spirit of Desolation here helps with that a little bit, that's flat penetration, but I think Obshard would have been a better choice here. 30 less power, sure, but you get 20% magic pen, you get an additional 10% on an ability every 10 seconds. Well, then again, I'm falling into default thinking. The enemy team didn't have the protections to make Obshard worth it. I'm just now remembering this. Only Gilgamesh had magic protections. Zonkwi only had the passive increase of his protections from his actual passive ability, so building Obshard would have been quite silly, actually. So this was actually the correct choice. It took me a second to register this, but yeah, Spirit of Desolation was an excellent pick here. Soul Reaver was the only one that I would be like, well, it was a bit risky, but it paid off. But definitely, you know, when you're thinking of Soul Reaver, check the enemy team, see how much health they're building, because that's what really makes the difference between whether or not Soul Reaver does 2% or 9% of their health, which makes a big difference. Now, the Gilgamesh played really well. Let's get that out of the way. The Gilgamesh had 2 primary issues. Despite the Gilgamesh's excellent gameplay and really strong grasp of how Gilgamesh plays, Gilgamesh was too aggressive. Gilgamesh was their only genuine frontline, and he was not building full tank until later on in the game, where clearly he recognized there was an issue here and went more tank. This was primarily indicated by Breastplate of Valor, where normally you would want to build some more health here. This ideally would have been Contagion, for instance. Another thing that was a problem with Gilgamesh is, besides not having as many protections as maybe you would want, it was a bit more heavy on the health. Slightly. There's a slight predominance of health here. The actual items themselves on the surface seem fine, but then you realize you've only got 40 protections here. This is fine at 60, this is fine at 65, and this is fine at 60. But you're also building these somewhat late. 40 physical protection as your first physical protection isn't a great move, and on top of that, we had 2 mages and myself. I was a guardian, magic damage, so Midgardian Mail probably wasn't what you would want to start with. The starting move really should have been, at this point, Pestilence. First off, you get 80 magic protections, which would have really helped you against the Anubis and the Agni, especially when you consider that every time Anubis hits you, you're losing roughly 7 magic protections, totaling up to 21, which really does hurt your survivability in the early game against Anubis. So, right off the top, that 80 magic protections would have really helped there. You would have gotten some HP to help with animosity. I believe it's 200. Let me double check that. It's 250. So you would have gotten 250 health to really help with your animosity damage later on down the road. Okay, great. You would have gotten some anti-heal. Now, at this point, when Gilgamesh had started Midgardian Mail, Agni was building something lifesteal, because once you get the tiny gem or tiny trinket or whatever it's called, you're clearly going lifesteal. Anubis, just based on his passive, was obviously going to go for lifesteal. And the Horus had Warrior's Axe, which is healing him. I had HP 5 out the absolute wazoo. And then later on, Izanami also built Aussie, and even though Izanami built Aussie later on, and Anubis obviously kept building magic lifesteal, Horus built Caduceus' shield, and does Gilgamesh at any point in time think to himself, hey, they're building a lot of healing, maybe I should get some anti-heal? No, this does not occur to Gilgamesh, and this was a serious problem. This is why Anubis was able to only die 1 time. There was absolutely... Okay, Discordia had anti-heal, and Artemis built anti-heal at the extreme end of the game. So besides Discordia, no one had anti-heal. And we were healing all over the place. Agni had Soul Gem, for Pete's sakes. So that was a huge missed opportunity by the Gilgamesh there. Especially, not only was it just a miss on the anti-heal, Midgardian Mail should not have been your lead in. It should have been Pestilence, get that anti-heal, swinging strong with a cost-efficient, massive boost in your magic protections, then you go into some physical protection. Now, another problem that I have with Midgardian Mail here is that the only person consistently auto-attacking was Horus and Izanami, and Horus was auto-attacking in between abilities. So, Midgardian Mail didn't make a lot of sense. Horus doesn't need attack speed to hit you hard with his auto-attacks. He just has to hit you with the specialized auto-attacks between his abilities. So the only person who was really going to care about Midgardian Mail was Izanami, and hyper-focusing down one member of the enemy team, and the wrong one at that, I'll explain that in a hot second, is not the move. Now, when you're going to counter-build some one specific enemy, pick the one doing the best. As amazing as my team did, Anubis was clearly hard carrying us. 10, 1, and 17 is an insanely good score. And to build Midgardian Mail against an Anubis, first item, an Anubis who is absolutely slapping, is not the move. It is not the move. This start here of the Midgardian Mail was an error. I'm kind of getting heated about this. I'll admit, I am pretty bothered by this, because it's really obvious from Gilgamesh's team comp. You can see right away, Gilgamesh really needed to step forward and play tank. And Gilgamesh failed his team in that regard. Gilgamesh's gameplay, fantastic. Excellent player, strong grasp of Gilgamesh, was right where he needed to be a lot of the time. I have no complaints about Gilgamesh's gameplay. It was amazing. Gilgamesh's build was not what his team needed. It was Gilgamesh should have been more devoted to the team. Guardian Mail was an error. Talisman of Energy, actually a good pick here. I will give Gilgamesh this. This was a good pick. It was not the anti-heal his team needed. And I'll actually go a hot step farther. Talisman of Energy and Shogun's Kusari themselves were not a problem. Okay? These are good picks for his team comp. Like I said, Zonkui, Heimdall, and Artemis all benefited from increased attack speed. Gilgamesh, it benefited from increased attack speed. I get that. That's great. What you could have done in order to really help your team out to the maximum potential is do the following. Benevolence. Frostbound Hammer. I wouldn't necessarily have built this first. Benevolence. Shogun's Kusari, second item. Third item, Contagion. Fourth item, Talisman of Energy. Fifth item... let me think about this for a hot second. Fifth item could have been... Really, I would have to say... Gauntlet of Thebes, or... Well, that would have been too late for Gauntlet of Thebes. Mail of Renewal would have been a really great choice, actually. Heal your allies around you while you're playing all aggressive and everything, or defending them, actually, even better. That would have been an option. Another good option, potentially, could have been... let me see... Brawler's Beatstick. Could have also gone with Toxic Blade. That would have been a great pickup here. And then you finish off with Frostbound. Alright? That would have been a substantially better build. Gilgamesh would have gotten tanky. Didn't need Frostbound until the end, because at the end, Frostbound would have actually been used with Animosity. This was built too early. Frostbound was built too early. The health is nice, the power is nice, but you've got nothing to withstand the wrath of Anubis, who is absolutely going to slap you down, or the Izanami, who had Ikaival early game. And it's like, okay. Zonkui built okay, you know, overall it was an okay build. Blood-Soaked Shroud, that's fine. I find this to be too weak in Arena, personally. My main issue is 2% of your health and mana is not going to matter in Arena, because every fight is a team fight, basically. There are rare exceptions, but for the most part, yeah, every fight is a team fight, so this isn't really going to heal you enough at that point anyways. I would have probably gone with the Hourglass for the cooldowns, personally. Personal preference. The Warlock Staff is actually a good pickup here. To build this that early and start stacking that up is a good move. You get power out of it, you get health, you get mana, you get everything you could possibly want out of an item. A little bit risky to build this early game in Arena, because again, you're competing with your allies for stacks, you're in constant team fights, so it can sometimes be a little tough to actually get at the minion waves to actually build those stacks. You kind of have to kill enemy gods for that, and it's a little bit harder to kill enemy gods for your stacks than minions. So it was a risk, and it did not pay off, and the main reason it did not pay off is because Gilgamesh was not tanking the way it should have been, so Zonkui had to kind of partially step into that role. The Warlock Staff did help with that, but not in the early game. Not in the early game. Chronos Pendant, fine. Again, a little bit early built here. I think a bit of a better build would have been, say that 3 times fast, would have been a little bit of lifesteal here, maybe. Again, you're looking at a lot of team fights. Or possibly, Spear of the Magus actually would have been a really great pickup here. Soul Gem is excellent. Gem of Isolation, pretty good, pretty good. Spear of the Magus was last. Now, I can understand that. The passive is better in the late game, but at this particular point right here, in the third item slot, you were already building up towards a percentage magical penetration. You needed some lifesteal, you needed some penetration, some flat penetration. You didn't necessarily... I mean, the cooldown is always really nice, but Chronos Pendant is quite expensive, especially since he was already building stacks, so this was going to slow him down even more. You know, on top of actually having to stack the Warlock's staff. So that was the main problem here. Chronos Pendant is amazing on Zonkui, but considering he was stacking, and it was an early game Arena, I would say that this is too expensive and took too long for him to actually get up to that end stage of Chronos Pendant. Spear of the Magus would have been faster, and it would have provided him a bit more punch in the mid-game that he desperately needed. The Discordia played really well, but I'm going to be really honest, Discordia probably built the best out of her team. In all honesty, I mean, Chronos Pendant right off the top, again, very risky, but it paid off in the Discordia's case because she immediately went into Divine Ruin. Now, by this point, this was a fairly interesting and bold move. Obviously, Anubis was going to build Lifesteal. There was a good chance Agni was going to, because Agni really likes Lifesteal. Izanami, whether or not Izanami was going to, didn't really matter, but this was basically built on the strength of Horus and Anubis having some form of healing on them. The fact that Agni went into Lifesteal and so did Izanami was a benefit to Discordia, but she built this very likely on the anticipation that Anubis and Horus were going to be healing a lot of damage. So she built Lifesteal, which is great. She built it at the appropriate time. Your second item is fine. 90 magic power is nothing to sneeze at. 10 flat magic penetration early game. Get that healing under control. Rod of Tahuti, again, it's nice, but this isn't the team comp you necessarily want to be running this against. I mean, Anubis is going to have these increased protections, and he's not going to fall under 50% health very easily. Horus is healing people. Izanami and Agni wound up with Lifesteal. Agni at this point was definitely building Lifesteal and was a healthy distance away from the Discordia. Agni, with his ult, outranges her slightly. So this was not an ideal pickup here, because even though the passive is powerful, they have to be below 50% health. And with the way that my allies were building, that just wasn't happening, or it wasn't staying that way very long. So I don't think in this particular situation, I'm normally of the mind that Rod of Tahuti is overbuilt anyways, but against our composition, I think this was not the best choice here. I think more penetration would have been a bit better, or maybe some other form of damage. Spear of Desolation would have been really nice. Get some cooldown, some more flat pen, a good power boost, and then build your magic penetration, your percentage penetration a little bit later. Spear of Desolation was built here. That's fine. Soul Reaver makes some sense. I have a lot of health. Horus has a lot of health. Agni had some decent increases in health. Anubis wound up having some decent increases in health. I mean, it wasn't a bad pickup. That's pretty good. And then this is going to be Staff of Mirrodin, which is excellent on Discordia. Really keep her dash, you know, she can dash twice, basically, and take advantage of the cooldown reduction from being in that little cloud. This really works well on Discordia, and I think this is underappreciated, the Staff of Mirrodin. But I would just have to say, probably the Rod of Tahuti didn't trigger as often as maybe Discordia wanted it to, because of just how our team comp was. Now the Heimdall, I'm going to talk about the Heimdall and the Artemis kind of at the same time here, because they built very similarly. Heimdall was going for some crits, and the wrong crits at that, and I'm going to explain that. Now the Heimdall clearly had some kind of starter item. I don't remember what this was off the top of my head. But then he went to Devourer's Gauntlet and did not finish stacking this. Now, there's a problem with Devourer's Gauntlet in Arena. And I'm not talking about a technical flaw, but in Arena, as early game as Arena is, you don't have time for this. Just like with the Zhonghui. Now, the Zhonghui finished the Warlock staff because Zhonghui is a mage. He's got AoE attacks. He can steal stacks away from his allies, and that is exactly what happened to Heimdall here. Artemis has a little bit more of a easier time building stacks because she's got the Rain of Arrows. It's a small AoE, so she can, you know, steal a minion here, steal a minion there. Still not a great pickup on Artemis, but at least she was capable of finishing her stacks because of that little AoE. Heimdall doesn't have this. He's got the sword, sure, but the sword is very slow, and he was using it very aggressively. And between Zhonghui and Artemis stealing his stacks anyways, the speed of the sword was not enough to actually keep up and get him the stacks he needed. Even though, yes, he can clear with the sword very effectively, it's just much slower than Rain of Arrows than Zhonghui's whole kit. He was just not really likely to finish stacking Devourer's Gauntlet here. And the main problem I have with Devourer's Gauntlet in Arena specifically is, at that point, why wouldn't you just build Aussie? You are, at the end of this, rolling around with, 30% lifesteal, alright? Now, first off, let's take a hot minute to look at Aussie. You'll get 20% physical lifesteal on a almost about the same cost item. You get some boosted attack speed, and then when you're almost dying, when you're over 2/3 dead, you get an additional 30% lifesteal. That is 50% physical lifesteal. In Arena, if you think about Devourer's Gauntlet and how long that takes to really get on board and be useful, Aussie's probably already saved your life at least twice. There's no reason to build Devourer's Gauntlet over Aussie in Arena. In most cases. There are the occasional exceptions. But in this meta, as it stands, with the way a lot of hunters are, and especially Heimdall, this was not the move. I would also not recommend building Transcendence for very similar reasons. At least Transcendence, you can be a bit more consistent on getting that evolved because it only requires 50 stacks as opposed to the good old 70 stacks of Devourer's Gauntlet, which in Arena, that extra 20 stacks is huge. But this was a mistake, especially for Heimdall. The Kaival was, again, kind of hyper-focused to the Izanami, but I can actually understand it here. Heimdall slaps pretty hard, so the increase in power makes a lot of sense here. Atlantis Bow, of course. Rage. This was Heimdall's second build mistake, because at this point in the game, they were behind, and they were starting to fall behind by an increasing margin. And Heimdall just, first off, does not crit very powerfully. He's got reduced crits, which you can still build crits on him and be very effective. But at this point in the game, Heimdall was behind. He was being focused out whenever we could. It's just, the likelihood of finishing stacking Rage was not high. It just does not make a whole lot of sense to build Rage this late in the game when you're behind in Arena, where you're not going to last much longer anyways. So very, very unwise choice here. The Oboe, perfectly fine. This makes some sense in Arena. I can totally understand this. The Artemis kind of had similar problems. She actually finished stacking her Devourer's Gauntlet. Again, Rain of Arrows is a little bit of a faster AoE ability than the sword that Heimdall has. She also built this right off the top. She didn't waste time with a starter item, so she just went right for the Devourer's Gauntlet and actually finished it, but it didn't matter because she had no escape from me, she had no escape from Anubis, she had no escape from Horus. Izanami's slow, for Pete's sake, was gonna kill Artemis, honestly. Agni, stuns, oh my goodness, we had a really bad team comp for her and Zongui. But she had the harder time because Zongui at least passively boosts his own protections, with more demons in the bag. She doesn't have that. So that's all I'm going to say about this match. For a large amount of this, it wasn't necessarily even just that our team was able to transition into the late game better just because of our kits. Khepri is better in the late game. Horus becomes tankier in the late game by sacrificing his power usually. Anubis has a really strong early game. He does usually fall off in the late game, unless you build him properly. He was built properly here for the most part. Agni does way better in the late game because he's absolutely slapping. Izanami, really depends on how you build her, but the Izanami here was being built more towards the late game, which was fairly interesting, but did work out for us in this game. And the enemy team was just building oddly, making some very unwise choices, except for Discordia, who generally had things in control. And they had no tank. They had no real frontline. Gilgamesh did not have enough protections early enough, and he also built them in the wrong order and was not able to tank for his team in the way they needed him to, despite him being an excellent player on a technical level. So, with that being said, thank you all very much for joining me on this very interesting arena match. And if you like this, please like and subscribe. And if you have any comments, questions, concerns, ideas, suggestions, what have you, please leave them down in the comment section below. And have a great 24 hours.